It was the most effective offensive performance that we've seen from the Knicks. 140.2 points per 100 non-garbage time possessions, according to Cleaning the Glass. 38.2% of their shots were taken at the rim. 41.6% of their shots were taken from three. That means that 80% of the Knicks shots were taken from the two most efficient spots on the court. The New York Knickerbockers were playing elite modern basketball. I can't believe I'm saying this. It's finally happened. This is Hot Hand Theory. This is a podcast where we talk about the NBA and break things down from an analytical perspective. I'm your host, XJ, and for the first time in the history of the Hot Hand Theory podcast, I do not have my brilliant co-host Geoff with me. Geoff is on the road, actually out in the tri-state area right now. He actually went to the Knicks-Wizards game at MSG on Monday. So I am here solo, and we're about to find out and see exactly how essential Geoff is to this entire operation we have over here. We're about to find out what Geoff's on-off is actually, and I suspect it's extremely high. But that aside, we have podding to do. We have stuff to talk about. A lot of Knicks, very exciting stuff to talk about when it comes to the Knicks. They're showing some amazing signs right now. Coming off of what, in my opinion, was by far their best game of the season, better than the Detroit game, better than the first Indiana game, even better than the Milwaukee game that I thought was also pretty excellent. So we're going to break it down in a way that you will only hear on the Hot Hand Theory podcast why the Knicks are showing stuff that people should be really excited about. I think you should be super excited about a lot of the things that we've seen. But, how much caution should we have given their opponents that they've had of late in the Nets and the woeful Wizards? Man, the Wizards are bad, guys. The Wizards are terrible. But first thing I wanted to do was just mention how we've appreciated all the comments that we've been getting on our videos. For the last episode of the pod, we received over 70 comments across 2 videos, which is insane. And we responded to each and every single one, actually. So I'm happy to say that. And I just have to say, because we're responding to every single comment, we see every single comment, I'm so excited by how smart and how thoughtful our listeners are. And trust me, I'm not saying this because the comments were agreeing with us. They were not all agreeing with us by any stretch of the imagination. And it's not because our listeners are a bunch of math nerds. They really aren't. You all really aren't. What I just noticed is that all the comments are so curious and want to understand basketball and understand it on a deep level and want to challenge what, is commonly accepted without deeper analysis, and including opinions that are shared by me and Geoff. So, I really love and appreciate all you guys who are listening and the community we're building. It's honestly been amazing. So let's dive in with that. Again, it's just me, so maybe some of the transitions won't be the best. I normally get to throw it over to Geoff, but I'll throw it back to myself, and we'll dive in. I think with the Knicks, let's start talking about immediately off the bat the Knicks versus Wizards game, which is their most recent game. I think gave us a glimpse of what the Knicks offense could really be for the first time this season. The very first time I felt like we saw the actual potential for what this offense could be and this team in general. And I was super excited about it. It was so fun. They played a ton of 5-out. They showed what we have been talking about forever. 5-out is not about threes. It is not about threes. It is about layups. And it's about lifting up that rim protector away from the rim. And once you get past that first level of defenders, it's over. You're getting a layup or you're getting a wide open 3. The first play of the game on offense, they get it to Brunson on a dribble handoff from Towns. He's attacking downhill. And because the spacing is so perfect, OG is able to cut right over the face of Jordan Poole, get a wide open dunk. It's just beautiful basketball. Beautiful basketball against an undisciplined defense for sure, but still beautiful basketball. We saw a ton of pick and rolls with players other than Brunson, which is something I've been desperately asking for a long time. Empty side pick and rolls between Josh Hart and Karl-Anthony Towns, which we love. Put the ball in the hands of your worst shooter, who is also an excellent playmaker and an excellent passer, and by the numbers, an elite finisher in the league. That seems like a good idea. They did that a ton. Empty side pick and rolls with OG and Towns. Really loved that. I mean, the fact that the Wizards weren't auto switching between Kuzma and Sarr was completely insane to me. But regardless, the Knicks were doing really smart stuff, albeit again against a really bad defense. We saw a couple of other things I want to bring up. So we saw Josh Hart bring up the ball and have Brunson just waiting in the front court, which is another thing we've talked about a lot and have asked for forever. And it got the Knicks some quick opportunities because the defense seemed to just be confused by the fact that Brunson's kind of waiting in the front court and Josh Hart is the one pushing it up the court. We saw Karl-Anthony Towns be able to take his man off the dribble on straight line drives to the rim with no rim protector, which again, the entire point of the 5-out look that Geoff and I have been talking about for so long at this point, upon getting Karl-Anthony Towns and bringing him to the Knicks, they get the straight line drive to the rim with no rim protector. And we saw Brunson also attack all the way and get all the way to the rim when he had an advantage. These are things that we haven't seen very much from this team up until this point, which is really interesting. And the Knicks also, another thing that we haven't seen very often, they made a concerted effort to get quick offense. Like, this is the slowest paced team in the entire league, something we've been harping on for the longest. In a few cases, Brunson pushes the ball up the court super fast and finds Bridges and OG for early post-ups against bad defenders like Jordan Poole, like Corey Kispert. This is like stuff that we haven't seen since Obi Toppin was leaking out in transition and would be down court posting up his man and sealing off his man and getting dunks at the rim. We haven't seen this kind of stuff, and this is what we saw in this game, and that's why I'm so encouraged. Not the final score and, like I keep mentioning, the opponent that they had in the Wizards and in the Nets in the 2 games prior. So it's not about the opponents. It's about the tendencies that we're seeing that is making me so excited, and I hope that they can carry that over from the Knicks standpoint to the future games against more difficult defenses and different types of opponents. But yeah, I mean, obviously Geoff is not here, so I can't have someone explain to me, like, where was this stuff before? Like, why did it require 13 games before they started implementing it? If you have a sense and you want to drop a comment that explains it to me, because again, I don't have Geoff to explain it to me. He might know. I don't know. So this is very strange. But all of this stuff all together resulted in a few things that I think the data does actually do an amazing job of distilling. It was the most effective offensive performance that we've seen from the Knicks. 140.2 points per 100 non-garbage time possessions, according to Cleaning the Glass. 38.2% of their shots were taken at the rim. 41.6% of their shots were taken from 3. That means that 80% of the Knicks shots were taken from the 2 most efficient spots on the court. The New York Knickerbockers were playing elite modern basketball. I can't believe I'm saying this. It's finally happened. The only other time we've seen anything even close to this from them this season in terms of their shot diet was against Milwaukee a couple weeks ago. I will say a lot of that was in transition. And in this Wizards game, I think it was almost a season low for them in transition scoring. So definitely a different reason why I think the Knicks were just playing extremely efficient and effective half-court offense, and were literally maximizing every single player on the court at all times. We saw Jalen Brunson have a great performance, Karl-Anthony Towns, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges. Every single one of their star players was able to be maximized, and that is the way the Knicks are going to put themselves into championship contention. And so that's why it's really exciting to see, despite it being against Washington. Okay, next I want to talk about Jalen Brunson. I want to talk about Jalen Brunson for a second because Geoff and I have talked a lot about Jalen Brunson and whether he just not capable of being able to take advantage of 5-out because of his lack of line drive speed and his inconsistent like court vision and passing. And for me, I've just really held out. I haven't been convinced of that. Part of the reason is because Brunson is just too good a basketball player. Like you don't have to be that good to take advantage of the insane amount of spacing with 5-out, with 5 shooters, with the spacing that alignment provides to you. You don't have to be an amazing line drive, a super hyper athletic player to take advantage of it. You just kind of have to be smart and get used to the leverage that you're able to create in those scenarios. And I think we're seeing some signs that Jalen Brunson is getting used to it. He's been able to leverage it a lot better. We saw a ton of really, really, really good passes from Brunson that we haven't seen in a bit, honestly. Maybe some last year, but we hadn't seen it that much this year. He had so many plays where he would get into the teeth of the defense and then have a perfect kick out for wide open threes. There was one, I think, in the first quarter. I have it written down, so I'll know for sure. Yes, it was one play in the first quarter to Josh Hart above the break, and it was a completely insane pass. He drove past his defender. He kind of had him on his hip, but he didn't have a good shot at the rim. I think a rim protector came over, and then his momentum's carrying him out of bounds. And then he got enough on the pass to throw a strike to Josh Hart above the break, who knocked down the 3, which is something we'll talk about as well. That was incredible. It was perfect leveraging of the 5-out. So when a rim protector has to come over, when someone has to come protect the rim because you've broken past that first level of defense and you can't give up a layup, then that gives you open threes, and that's the punishment. And Brunson was perfectly able to take advantage of that. We also saw Bridges make an excellent kick out to Josh Hart on the other wing as well on a similar play. But I do have to say that obviously I'm giving the Knicks a lot of credit, and it makes sense. They scored a ton. They played amazing basketball, their best game of the season. The Wizards defense is like an actual joke. Like they play in drop defense like every time down. When the ball screen comes, the big is sagging back into the paint, trying to contain the ball handler. And every team in the league should know by now you can't defend the Knicks that way, especially not consistently. You can't just play drop defense. We're just going to let, Towns pick and pop all day. We're just going to let Brunson get 2 to the ball. Like, it doesn't really make sense to guard them that way. It just leaves too many openings for the shooters, and it makes offense too easy. But at the same time, the Knicks were totally able to take advantage of it and leverage it to a maximum extent, and we hadn't seen them do that since this point in the season. I mentioned Josh Hart. I said I was going to talk about Josh Hart. Obviously, I will say I think I've been the biggest proponent of Deuce McBride starting over Josh Hart because I just believe the lineup would just be much better. Geoff has been a huge proponent of Deuce starting over Josh Hart, I think largely on his end because he thinks it fixes a lot about the wing rotation and the minutes distribution that we've seen be really problematic. And now I think kind of implicit in the analysis for both of us is this is all contingent on Josh Hart not just becoming a different player. But I will say, I have to be honest, I don't really think he's like a different player. I think he's just been maximum Josh Hart. He's just been so sharp with everything. His finishing has been unreal. Knicks fans will know how, his finishing has always been really good. Actually, it's funny because whenever you watch a Knicks game, when they're on TNT and Stan Van Gundy is on the broadcast and he's always like, Josh Hart's one of the best finishers I've ever seen, like especially in transition, and it's Giannis and LeBron and then it's Josh Hart. Well, he's playing like that now. He's actually living up to what Stan Van Gundy thinks of him at the rim. He's shooting 79% at the rim. It's just complete nonsense on 4 attempts per 75, which is actually the second most attempts of his entire career. So, part of it you have to believe is the spacing environment making his attempts at the basket that much easier. But he's also just on a complete heater all around. I mean, he makes everything from the mid range that he puts up. His shooting He's shooting 36% from three over the last 10 games on 33 attempts. And we should just all recall that he's had these red hot stretches at various times throughout his career, even in his short tenure with the Knicks so far. It's happened a ton of times. When they first acquired him, he shot 44% from three over the final 30 games of the season that he played in, of the regular season when they first acquired him. And then the playoffs last year, obviously everyone remembers, he shot 43% from three in the Sixers series. So this is a consistent theme from him. We know he can get hot. His confidence increases. He shoots more and he makes more. Is it sustainable? I don't think it's sustainable. And for that reason, I think what's happening right now is that we're getting a glimpse of what things would look like if it was Hart, or, the fifth starter was a very good shooter. And that's what I think is happening right now. It's like almost like a proxy of what the Knicks offense would look like if their fifth starter was a really good shooter who commanded respect and gravity on the perimeter. This is what the offense would look like, which is what, I've been trying to say. And with Deuce McBride starting, is that, are you going to lose some on the rebounding end? Maybe. I mean, I'm not positive that you will. We can't really know that. Like, having a shooter out there affects some of the positioning in terms of the defense. So who knows if their rebounding would go down, their ability to offensive rebound the basketball would go down. On the other end, defensively, who knows the kinds of shots that the opponent is getting with Deuce McBride at the point of attack. So it's really hard to say, oh yeah, the Knicks rebounding is going to get worse. But even if it did, look at what the offense looks like when you have a fifth player out there who is commanding respect and who can knock down shots. This is what it looks like, which is incredible. And honestly, in my opinion, the Knicks look unstoppable offensively if this is what they're going to get from Josh Hart. Again, I don't think it'll hold up, but we'll see. And if he can have a year where he shoots 35% from three with a little bit more consistency and a little bit less variance, he will fit perfectly into that starting lineup, and this team will completely explode as long as they continue to play like this and do some of the things that we've seen them do so far. Karl-Anthony Towns, I have to talk about Towns. OG Anunoby has been excellent, an elite defensive wing. He's been awesome offensively. I mean, he's showing much more variety than a lot of people expected from him, including myself. I didn't really expect him to be able to put it on the floor as much, run pick and rolls, hit from the mid-range with such consistency. It's been really cool to see. I love it. A stabilizing force for the team overall, especially with his defense. OG's been incredible. Jalen Brunson, hasn't hit the kind of MVP level we saw from him last year, but he's still been an elite impact offensive player, just with the gravity and attention. And he's like I said, he's kind of starting to figure out how to leverage the attention and the space, like I talked about. And, he's just been really good and really solid, and his impact has been tremendous. Like, there's no way to doubt that, even if he hasn't kind of blown us away and hasn't played a perfect game. He's still so good and commands so much respect and attention that he's still having a tremendous offensive impact. And then Josh Hart, like I said, has been unreal, obviously. But anyone who thinks that Karl-Anthony Towns has not been the Knicks' best player, I just think you're way off. I just think you're way off. And to demonstrate that, I wanted to share some of a deep dive that I did on Towns so far this year. It's legitimately crazy stuff that we're seeing from Karl-Anthony Towns. So first, looking at his raw per 75 possession stats. So just so you know, I use per 75 possessions instead of per 36 or per game, because it gives you a better sense of how that player is producing if you account for the pace and if you give them a high normal-ish amount of starters minutes in a game. So per 75 does a great job of doing that. Karl-Anthony Towns is averaging 29.5 points per 75, which is 98th percentile in the league, on an elite 67.2% true shooting percentage, which is 93rd percentile in the league. To have that high volume of scoring on elite efficiency is so rare, it doesn't even really make sense. It's impossible to keep it up because this would be a historic season, an all-time great offensive season if Karl-Anthony Towns were to be able to keep it up. So I don't think that's going to happen. I'm always going to bet against history being made until it happens. But what he's done so far is like mind-blowing. It's completely mind-blowing. Not only that, to go along with the scoring, the efficiency, he's averaging 14 rebounds per 35, including almost 11 defensive rebounds per 75, which is 99th percentile in the league. His turnovers, as Geoff and I actually talked about, expecting coming into the season, playing in the Tibbs system, his turnovers are way down to an 8% turnover rate to go along with a 14% assist rate, which is actually the lowest of Towns' career, despite us all, and Knicks fans and people who are watching the games, seeing glimpses of his elite passing ability from the 5 spot. And I think that's surprising a lot of people, but if you looked deep into the data prior to this, you would have seen that Towns has always been an elite creator from the 5 spot, an elite passer, bar none, not like for a big, just in general in the NBA. And on the impact metrics end, where, they try to isolate impact players are having on the court, he leads the Knicks by far in B-ball indexes, small sample. LeBron, with Brunson is second, and then actually Hart is third over OG. I know a lot of people think OG has been the best player on the team, been maybe the second best player on the team, at least by LeBron's impact metric, by B-ball indexes impact metric LeBron. They have him at fourth behind Josh Hart, but all of them have really high impacts. Towns clearly far and away ahead in first in that metric. Beyond that, Towns is currently actually sixth in the entire NBA in overall LeBron, behind Tatum, Jokic, SGA, Franz, and Luka. That's the company that he's in overall LeBron, not just offensive LeBron, overall LeBron. And then Towns is also actually number 9 in the NBA in overall box plus minus, which is Basketball Reference's one number metric, and third overall in offensive box plus minus, which, looking at impact metrics, there is a difference in the reliability of the offensive metrics and the defensive metrics. Defensive metrics can be a lot more susceptible to luck. So oftentimes we don't really trust those until they have a really significant sample, or a player is just involved in a ton of plays, so that we can kind of weed out what aspects of it is luck and what aspects of it is a result of something the player is doing that is causing the positive or negative impact on the game. So just looking at box plus minus, if we just look at it on the offensive end, Karl-Anthony Towns is only behind Nikola Jokic and SGA. That's it. It's Nikola Jokic who is having one of the most impactful offensive seasons of all time right now. SGA, who is leading the Oklahoma City Thunder single-handedly almost on the offensive end. Well, he gets a lot from J-Dub, and a lot of the supporting players are really good, but in terms of driving that offense, it is SGA. Those are the only two that are ahead of Karl-Anthony Towns. So Towns is ahead of Steph Curry, AD, Kyrie, Jason Tatum, Giannis. This is crazy stuff. And then you guys have to hear this. We talked about passing a little bit. In terms of passing creation quality, this is a data point, a metric from B-Ball Index that I tried to talk about prior to the season when talking about passing and what we can expect from Karl-Anthony Towns in terms of his creation ability, his passing ability. Passing creation quality tries to evaluate the quality of scoring opportunities that players create for their teammates. So when players on the team are getting the ball from Karl-Anthony Towns, how good are those opportunities to score? Karl-Anthony Towns is 97th percentile in the NBA in passing creation quality. The next highest of the Knicks starters is Jalen Brunson, who is 46th percentile in the NBA in this stat. We're talking about no one else on the team even being average in this very important metric, in my opinion, in terms of creating open shots, and Karl-Anthony Towns being 13th in the NBA with a bunch of guards and other elite passers. This is not, I'm not filtering by bigs or by position. This is in the NBA. And And one of the reasons for Karl-Anthony Towns' incredible impact offensively, as we all know, is his three-point shooting. But he also is unparalleled in terms of deep three-point shooting. I was worried about the Knicks defense, deep three-point shooting, as I believe that deep three-point shooting is kind of the next precipice or horizon of the NBA in terms of creating maximum space. If you can spot up further behind the line, now defenses are not able to get out to contest your shots, and now the spacing becomes even greater, especially when we're talking about above the break. Obviously, you can only space so far in the corner. But I thought Dante DiVincenzo is one of the best deep three-point shooters in the league. Hasn't shot the ball tremendously well so far this season, but obviously he will improve as time goes on. But losing DiVincenzo was a big deal because you lost that deep three-point shooting that you can't really make up. OG Anunoby is not a deep three-point shooter. Mikal Bridges can barely get the ball to the rim from above the break. Like, let's just be honest about it. Mikal Bridges is awesome in the corner. It has shot the ball like a mind-bogglingly well from the mid-range. Like, he's literally, when he gets the ball in the mid-range and he pulls up, you're just like, okay, he's gonna make it. Like you don't even think that it's gonna hit the rim, basically. But above the break, he can barely make it to the rim. Forget about being a deep three-point shooter. So the Knicks don't have a ton of that, and it's like, where is that gonna come from? Karl-Anthony Towns in three-point shot making, deep three-point shot making, is number 1 in the NBA right now. And in overall three-point shot making is number 4 in the NBA, ahead of his former teammate, Anthony Edwards, and other guys named Steph Curry, Lauri Markkanen, and LaMelo Ball, who have all been excellent this season. And over the course of their careers, Karl-Anthony Towns is effectively a better three-point shooter right now than all of those guys, and a better three-point shooter from the deep range than anybody in the league right now. This is the impact that Karl-Anthony Towns is having, and this is why he has such a disproportionate, outsized impact on the offensive end. On the defense, I wanted to talk a little bit about his defense. I will say this, take it with a grain of salt. Like I said, impact metrics are going to be more influenced by luck when we're talking about defensive impact metrics. But Karl-Anthony Towns is currently 3rd in the New York Knicks. I'm not making this up. He's currently 3rd on the New York Knicks in defensive LeBron. So everybody who said Karl-Anthony Towns is a terrible defender, defensive LeBron has him 3rd and 2nd among the Knicks starters. So he's currently 55th percentile in the NBA, ahead of Josh Hart, Deuce McBride, way ahead of Mikal Bridges. Jalen Brunson don't look at this stat. Don't look at Jalen Brunson when you look at this metric. Trust me. I'm gonna save your eyes and your potentially hypertension. But Karl-Anthony Towns is actually 3rd on the Knicks. It's not good. None of these guys are good defenders or are having a high impact defensively, but Towns is still not at this bottom barrel, horrible, worst defensive player in the league like some people have made it out to be. And even though I think, again, like I said, you got to take these metrics with a grain of salt, especially early in the season, this is pretty consistent with the rest of his career when he's played at the 5. This is not really anything different because his role is not to be a primary rim protector in most scenarios. So he is bad. He is horrible at protecting the rim. There is no doubt about it. He is bad at protecting the rim. But that's not really his primary role. That's not the goal for him, and it shouldn't be. And, guys like OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, those guys have to kind of shore up behind Towns. They have to prevent guys from getting to the rim, and it's a group effort, and that's the way that you play with Karl-Anthony Towns as your 5. And I think the Knicks are starting to move towards being able to do that and put less pressure on him. And we'll see that still continue to improve as the season goes on. But right now, he is not having this horrible, terrible impact on their defense. He is kind of holding his own overall, despite the terrible rim protection. Some ways that he does that, obviously with his elite rebounding. People underrate and underestimate how important rebounding is to defense. You're ending a possession. So defense needs to end a possession, or else your defensive rating is going to go through the roof, because when one possession is not over until you get the defensive rebound. If the offense gets an offensive rebound and they score, then they may be one of two, but defensive rating does not consider it such. They consider it as they had a possession and they scored on that possession. So you need to secure defensive rebounds in order to secure a really good defensive rating. Karl-Anthony Towns has been an elite, one of the best rebounders in the league, and it's not just all gimme rebounds. He is fighting and getting contested rebounds on a consistent basis. Other things that he does, post defense, 97th percentile in the league. His help defense, 88th percentile in the league. And he's held up well in isolation, 77th percentile in the league. So I just think he's not having this horrible impact on the defense as it's being made. And the fact that he's been passable defensively and this elite, like almost in all-time great levels of offense that we've seen from him so far, make him clearly far and away the Knicks' best and most impactful player this season. I don't think it's close. I don't think there's really even a conversation to be had. Obviously, I'll say he's shooting an unsustainable 52% from three. He's not going to shoot 52% from three this year. That's not going to happen. So we'll see some regression. But I think even with some regression, he's going to have this elite offensive impact. We've seen it across his entire career when he's played at the 5, some not so great defense, poor rim protection, and elite, historically great offensive impact. And guess what? He's still that guy. He's still that guy, and he's going to continue to be that guy. And so I think Knicks fans should be ecstatic with Karl-Anthony Towns, ecstatic with what they saw from that Wizards game, because we saw a lot of things that the Knicks need to start incorporating on a daily basis, on a regular basis, that will keep them really at the top of the conference in terms of offensive rating in a sustainable way, and maybe potentially even be able to contend for one of the best offenses in the game with the Boston Celtics, with other teams who are going to be up there at the end of the game, at the end of the day. So I think it's really encouraging. And again, take everything with a grain of salt. It was against the Wizards, but we saw a lot of really promising things. So yeah, I think that's it for me. We had just a short one for you. Obviously, as Geoff is away partying in New York and New Jersey, it's well deserved though that he's getting this opportunity. Next week, actually, we have an awesome co-host filling in for Geoff. I'm super excited about that. Can't wait for that pod. And don't forget to comment saying you miss Geoff and how bad this was without him, which is okay. I'm totally cool with that. And don't forget to listen to the rest of this episode on the next video, which will be, I think, a really fun conversation. We're going to be talking about the super exciting situation in Orlando with Franz Wagner taking the reins. Magic 6-0 in their last 6. So you won't want to miss my thoughts on that. It's going to be crazy. And see you over there.